Welcome to the lesson on percent of increase and percent of decrease. This is a proportional relationship. When we're calculating percents, we can use the formula K times X equals Y to complete some simple calculations for percentage problems. However, we're going to change the variables slightly to fit the problem we're working on. We know that K stands for a rate. A rate can be a percent. It can be a decimal, 0.30 or 0.3, or it can be a fraction, like 3/10. For percent of increase and decrease problems, we're going to be working with percentages, but before we plug that rate into the formula, we'll convert it to its decimal equivalent. And speaking of the formula, this is the formula for proportional relationships, and it applies to what we're working on. We're just going to select different variables to best represent the type of information we're going to be receiving in these problems. For example, we know K is a rate and can take any one of these forms. But for the sake of these problems, instead of a K, we're going to use a lowercase r, and instead of an X, we're going to use an O to represent the original start amount. And then for the letter Y, this is where we're going to represent the difference. And we're going to measure the growth, which is an increase, or we're going to measure loss, which is a decrease. That difference gets measured against the original amount. Let's take a look. Each time you set up one of these problems, you're going to identify the original amount you've been given and the new amount. You need to find, by subtracting, the difference between where you started, the original amount, and where you're at with the new amount. Once you find the difference, you're going to compare that to the original amount. In step 2, you'll use this formula, rate times original equals difference. Let's take a look at problem number 1. Bob answered 42 questions correctly on this year's spelling bee. Last year, he answered 35 questions correctly. What is the percent of increase in the number of questions he answered correctly? Well, an important thing to determine is what happened first. Did he answer the 42 correctly, which occurred this year, or the 35, which occurred last year? Well, clearly the original amount that he started with, please record these notes on your notebook paper. The first year he had 35 correct, but the new amount, which occurred this year, is 42. As we subtract and find the difference between these two values, we see he has a difference of 7. He increased by 7. This, once we subtract, is our difference. Please circle that and put a D by it. And the 35 is our original amount. Those are the two values you're going to use in the formula, and you're going to measure the percent of increase that Bob experienced. You're going to measure a growth of 7 against an original amount of 35. It's simple. Write down your formula. R times O, original, equals D. Now, we're looking for the rate, or the percentage rate here, times an original 35 equals a difference of 7. Let's drop a dotted line down our equation and solve for the variable r. We're going to divide both sides by 35. R equals, now go ahead and grab your calculator, punch in 7 divided by 35. You should have gotten 0.2 on your screen. Now that's a decimal value. And remember, we want to represent our percent of increase with a percentage. So quickly convert that decimal into a percent. Move the decimal 2 places or multiply by 100. We see that Bob experienced a 20% increase. So on the line, please write 20%. And you can also follow that by the word increase. If you're working in your spiral, please take notes in that spiral notebook. Let's move on to the next 2 problems. We will do these together. Problem number 2. This year, 470 students attended the junior high school. Last year, which comes first, of course, that's our original, 500 students attended the school. What is the percent of decrease in the number of students? Well, I'm going to abbreviate now. Our original amount occurred last year. That's 500. The new amount for this year is 470. If you subtract, you find that there's a difference of 30 students. The population dropped by 30 students. This is our difference, and this is our original amount. We're going to use both of those values in our equation and measure the change. Rate times the original amount equals the difference. We're looking for the rate, so let's leave the variable in there, times 500 equals 30. Now drop a dotted line down your equation, and let's solve this equation. We're going to divide both sides by 500. We get a rate that equals, take a moment and punch in 30 divided by 500. You're going to get a decimal value on your calculator. You should have gotten 0.06. But remember, we have to take a moment and convert that to a percent. Multiply by 100, which moves the decimal 2 places. We end up getting 6%. There was a 6% decrease in the population. Let's do one more together. In May, Sue earned $60 from pet sitting. In June, she earned $75. Clearly, May is the original month. It's first. What was the percent of increase in her income? So our original amount is 60. Please record this in your notes. The new amount is 75. We see that there's been a change, some growth. If you subtract, you find a difference of $15. So we're going to use our difference of 15 and our original amount of 60 and find the percent of growth. Here we go. R times O equals D. We're looking for a rate, so we leave the variable in there, times 60 equals 15. Let's drop a dotted line and solve. We're going to divide each side by 60. We get R equals, take a moment and punch that into your calculator. You should have gotten 0.25. Now let's multiply by 100 and convert it to a percentage. That is the rate or the percent of increase. Let's move on to page 2.